Saturday, November 5th, 2022. Driving to the Poconos. I only have a few of these trips left before I have that storage facility emptied out and that expense eliminated. And the fact that I'm here talking about it on this drive, sharing it with you, recording it with my Apple phone in my Jeep Wrangler in order to publish the video to YouTube that goes into a sequence of videos that include a lot of talking head coding videos. It's the future, man. We might not have flying cars, but the fact that this is a thing, the fact that we're living in a world where casual conversation on a long, lonely drive can kind of sort of take place one way as it may be through little tricks like this is amazing to me. I remember when I was a wee little kid drawing pictures of TVs that were no bigger than maybe a matchbox or an eraser, thinking a few things. First, who am I kidding? That future would never come. No one but me has an interest in images on tiny things that they could keep in their pockets. I imagine myself alone in the desire to have these, almost magical boxes that were a lot like TVs. The connection was clear, but which did other things. And I remember I used to draw the tiny power switches. I don't think I envisioned how touch-screeny they would be. I would be like, oh, that's even too far in the future. Just get the screen small, give it an on and off, the ability to flip channels. So my mind was very much fixed in that rigid way of thinking that broadcast television nurtured, created the tuning into channels model, the fixed and limited number of choices, and the mostly passive one-way flow of information, communication, and you're a consumer. And how much they are trying to push us to be consumers now, when we could all be content producers. And it goes under the category of almost why not? If the things, the technological infrastructure of the world, the Google services, the Apple devices, the telecom networks and satellites are going to be the way they are, if they are providing us the ability to do this much stuff, why not take advantage of it? Why not play? Take your seat at the table. I remember YouTube's upping my video length time from some 10 minutes or so to unlimited. And I was like, really? So your hard drives don't fill up? Or I don't have to be so stingy with my time. I don't have to set video editing as a prerequisite for pushing up some video. Because if you can upload video of any time, you can shift the responsibility onto the viewer or future AIs to edit it together into something short and punchy and amusing and appealing to today's audience tomorrow. So that's how I should build myself. Appealing to today's audience tomorrow. They will not know until the AIs have come in and cleaned up and, panned for gold within all this stuff I push up, that there was some nuggets in there, some true gems, which any one of which could lead me to some financial, timeline, some timeline in which I have lots of financial success. And it has really not been my priority. I am almost allergic to things that make me give up my time and freedom in exchange for money. Now, one would think a day job like the one you hold, a clock punching type job, work as at home as it might be, you're still just performing tricks for someone higher up, and you must do that on a rigid scheduled basis. Okay, so it's a fair exchange. You bring your skills to the table in exchange for a certain amount of value, be it measured however it's measured today, and a salary, right? So you get a salary for work done. Now, there's a very strong picture of our time at some assembly line equating to money. A person manning a spot in an assembly line makes it easy to calculate how much money you should be paid, because you get paid X amount an hour, you worked Y hours, and you did it up to the quality expectation that was required, and so you get paid. Now, this work from home era that we're in, even though that picture still works, it is in fact a valid mental framework to be within. It downplays innovation, inventiveness, just synonyms for different things. People invent out of love, out of necessity, because they want to. They've got an itch, and in order to scratch that itch, they have to take up certain tools and express certain behaviors using those tools. And sometimes that results in new tools that other people can pick up in turn, and it becomes very meta. And over time, if those tools become fundamental, always having to be there, a new assumed part of the capabilities, then the tools themselves, and perhaps even some instruction on how to use them, need to be passed down from person to person, from generation to generation. Be it in the DNA or not. Sometimes it gets into the DNA. It's wacky, but it does. The DNA, or even something else that is like DNA and how traits can be handed down, but it's not encoded as genes into DNA. It's just handed down. That's epigenetics. It's a weird friggin' field whose rock star at the moment, his name is Michael Levin. You go Google that guy. A different Michael Levin on the internet is talking about how learned traits and behaviors, alterations to physical body form, and things like it can be passed down in a hereditary way from generation to generation without it being expressed in your genes. The capacity for behavior A or behavior B, the capacity for body form A or body form B is encoded into your genes. That's what's encoded, the potential to take various, to express the capacity for genes to express, gene expression. The capacity to express in different ways is in your genes, but not necessarily which characteristic or attribute will be expressed. That is more a function of all the many details in play for a single instance that has been instantiated, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's life is dramatically different. Your fate was not cast in stone by your DNA. according to the best science has to offer, has not predestined your calling in life. There is no fate. You can take the reins of your own vehicle or cart or, carriage, implying that there's horses there. Those horses are there. Those horses are your more natural, innate animal behavior. It's a thing. We were not cognizant, thinking humans with the tools of language first. Language is an external tool that became internalized over time. Just as our bones were, that all our appendages and uprightness and, boniness comes from calcium ingested. Second most abundant, I guess, is it element? I guess it's element is the word, because there's all the really heavy stuff sinks to the bottom, is not in high abundance. So all the iron, that's why the core of the earth is made from iron. And as it's rotating, all that iron is moving and there's fields generated, and so the world is a magnet with a magnetic field shape, just like a magnet. You could hold iron filings. That same shape is all around us. We're inside it. We're inside that torus donut-shaped bubble. And a sense of up and down, sense of gravity, a lot of things sticking together, a lot of phenomenons being created because of the way electric fields interact. The interaction of fields, gravity is warped space-time. Electromagnetic fields are weird. At least you can understand space being bent, so that something falling towards an object is really just going in a straight line. It's along the curve to space-time, right? It makes electromagnetism even harder to understand in its own way, because again, you're back to spooky actions at a distance. For all intents and purposes, spooky action at a distance actually refers to something at an even much smaller scale. The spin states of quarks and other things being bound, of atoms. It's not just quarks, it's big things. It can be as big as a buckyball, but the states that particles are in, electrons, photons, molecules, can be tied together, separated by arbitrary distances at the other side of the galaxy, the other side of the universe. They could be entangled if they could stay in an entangled state that far. But you don't even need that. That works at such a small scale. If you just looked at the way electromagnetic waves moved around locally, influencing each other, two magnets repelling each other when they're pole to pole, well, at least gravity's bending. What's happening there with those fields? Well, the answer is it's what's happening everywhere. That thing that just happens to be happening at a macroscopic scale, the scale that humans can look at and go, oh, that's an invisible, cushiony field of energy, is really happening everywhere. It's happening in water to keep water droplets together as the surface tension, and it makes liquids coherent. Water is particularly magnetic, and water is a component of so many things. So a lot of liquids, I think, seem more magnetic than they really are. So if you're like, oh, what's a non-magnetic liquid? Well, there's oil. And that's why oil and water don't mix, right? Their ability to bond with each other because of the magneticness of their molecules are different. Water works one way, V-shaped, highly magnetic, highly polarizable, to whatever oil-shaped is. I guess it's more scattered, perhaps. And so magnetism is all around us, much like the magical thing that we see at the macroscopic scale, with same poles repelling each other and a cushiony invisible force in between. The miraculous thing is not that that's like that. The miraculous thing is that we don't notice that kind of thing everywhere all the time. That's the normal state, that stickiness, that things have cohesion and friction and smoothness or not smoothness. It's all magnetic. It's magnetic fields interacting. So magnetism is much more common of an effect manifest than one would think, because everything that the sense of touch reveals to us is actually magnetic and electromagnetic in nature. It's more than we give it credit for. The colors that we see is just one tiny little slice that we are sensing the electromagnetic radiation, the wavelength of things, the electromagnetic properties, but at a distance by focusing the waves that everything emits, I guess. If things are visible, that means stuff is bouncing off of stuff, and what's encoded into those things bouncing around carries a lot of information about what it touched. That's why you can focus the light of a lens and get a picture of it. Is the ability to merely focus images in a lens quantum in nature? Like, how much information is encoded right there? All the possibilities? Makes me think of how holograms work as well, right? Holograms encode a lot more information into a two-dimensional surface than you would think in there. It's an excellent way of creating information compression, because accessing the information in a hologram from different angles reveals different information. You can see around things. How is that even possible? Well, some theory goes that that is such a compelling effect about how reality works that we ourselves could very well be a hologram, the illusion of three-dimensional space actually occupying two dimensions. Well, what two dimensions exactly? Are we on a rippling flag? Are we the brains in supersymmetry, brain theory? Not necessarily. It can be within the context of what we know to, quote, be real in our observable world. Whole universes could exist in the surface of a black hole, is what I've heard. I don't know how much credence to give this, but time slows down as you get closer and closer to the event horizon, to such time and place as to where there is no time, and places being condensed, infinitely dense. So you're becoming very small and slowed down on the surface of a black hole. Do you ever go in it? What is inside a black hole? Solid neutrinos, I believe, is the current thinking, right? Because while fusion is going on, helium's being created. While helium gets packed densely together as a chemically reactive substance, a noble gas, it doesn't keep it from being packed dense together to such time that helium, the gas, becomes helium, the solid. I would imagine it's much like a metal. Helium and metal in the center of a star. And then even that gets packed densely such that individual helium atoms start to lose their identity. I guess it overcomes their strong nuclear force such that things shift, quarks give up something or gain something, and they all become neutrinos. Protons and neutrons. Neutrons, not neutrinos. I'm sorry, I'm correcting myself. Neutrinos are those completely having, well, neutrons are similar in that they have no charge. All the charge is given up. Neutrinos are a chargeless, I believe, even much tinier thing zipping through all of us that get given off during the fusion process, shining out from the sun, just like light. Neutrinos shining through us at all time. But that is not to be confused with the neutrons of a neutron star, you see. So neutron stars after a star burns up, I believe, are all the protons of helium saying, I'll be a neutron now. So it's just densely packed neutrons, like it's one big atom, one giant atom of neutrons inside a black hole. And that's plausible because black holes occupy some space, right? They're not actually all singularities. They remain at this size where there's an event horizon, and that's where universes apparently exist, on that membrane surface of the black hole. They are also emanating radiation. They're emanating Hawking radiation. How can something with an event horizon, with gravity so strong and time so slow that anything that gets close can't exist, still emit something? On the other side of the event horizon, where things can still escape if they're going in the right direction with the right velocity, particles pop into existence, because even the things inside a black hole are not particles per se. They are the crests of rippling quantum fields. And certain parts of those rippling quantum fields are exiting the universe we know and re-entering the universe we know. As if the troughs and crests of I don't even know if I have those words right, but the tops and bottoms of waves, of rippling waves. So something's rippling, and when they ripple here, they are virtual particles. Something people say is a terrible misnomer, making too much out of something that should just be assumed as part of the background noise of existence. There is no such thing as nothing in any space we can occupy. So long as we're occupying space, it's hard to imagine the lack of everything, right? Because we are something. So what is outside that something? If it's outside that something, it's still something. It's a problem in science and philosophy. So, quantum theory conveniently patches up that hole by saying there really is no nothing. No matter where you are, there are rippling quantum fields, or you wouldn't be able to be there. We are the stuff of matter. We cannot be where matter doesn't exist to support our being as a vessel or vehicle. Even if our consciousness or our spirit or our soul is tuned in like an antenna from sources unknown, the part of us that's manifesting here in the material world can't observe things unless the body of our material world can be there. So bammo whammo, we're locked into something akin to the 3D space of height, width, and depth. We've got that illusion going on, and we're here to occupy it and observe it, and be told it's probably wrong, that it is just the derived effect of so much stuff being lumped together that it shares a certain common reality. It looks like a stage for us to live on because of tricks of how things lump together and how consciousness works. Right? So we don't really know whether what quantum is trying to tell us, quantum mechanics, quantum theory, now believed as quantum mechanics by many people, right? So first it's a theory, then it has to be proven. Proven? Question mark? Proven! Exclamation point, at least according to the Nobel Prize, judges, because the proving of quantum mechanics as a real thing, including all the randomness and non-locality, was the subject of the Physics Nobel Prize this year, 2022, saying, yep, you're right, and the gang of quantum is right. People like Niels Bohr saying, shut up and calculate, and don't worry about non-locality until you measure where things are. those folks are right. And Einstein, who's saying that can't possibly be the case, that the universe can't be statistical in nature, are wrong. There are no hidden variables. I think we've eliminated the possibility of hidden local variables. So variables that are hidden right in the particle-like object that we're studying. A number of tests carried out by the Nobel Prize winners this year, and going way back to Bell, of Bell's inequality theorem, had designed experiments to rule out local variables to account for non-locality. Check, 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 check. So there are still those who believe that local variables can exist, but non-locally. Variables can exist, but non-local. So what does that mean? That's another way of saying non-locality. If variables exist that are carried around, transmitted, always actually connected because space isn't what we think or whatever it is, if they are non-local and they're variables, it's still non-locality. You just have given up and saying, okay, maybe not spooky action at a distance, we won't use those precise words, but the variables are held somewhere else, wherever that somewhere may be. And then the third school of thought, increasingly well known as the Sabine Hoffman, I gotta learn your last names, the physicist Sabine, who believes in superdeterminism, which is to say that your axioms or your tenets of making your measurements to determine whether non-locality exists or not are themselves invalid. Invalid axioms. It still could be determined at the moment, of the Big Bang, the universe come into existence, so that if you replayed the whole universe, it would replay in the exact same way as it did the first time. It has tremendous implications on free will. Can you, moment by moment, change your mind? It's one of the most lovely things in the world, one of the most lovely experiments. There's a lot of talk about thought experiments, right? So, what's a thought experiment? Well, whether there's an absolute coordinates in the universe would be one. That was commonly believed up until Einstein's, general theory of relativity. I believe the special theory of relativity plays in. It got that name afterwards. After the general theory was created 10 years later, the paper that was released as one of his first 5 or first 3, his amazing 5 papers that he wrote when he was very young, like 28 years old, still a patent clerk. One of them got renamed as special relativity, which had a lot to do with a now moment. You couldn't have a now moment without having a blurry moment into the future and a blurry moment into the past. So when you talk about now, you're talking about things that have a dimension, this cross-section of time you're talking about can't exist without some delta between a prior and a future state. Special relativity. General relativity, in a broader sense, things have no fixed position in time or space without being measured relative to some other body, and they together can establish the coordinate system by which other things are measured. And that's pretty much what's going on here, even when taking into account circular momentum, because bodies can spin. Those 2 dots fixed relative to each other are themselves not necessarily stationary in some greater space, but they might be spinning relative to another dot that gets brought into the picture, or two other dots brought into the picture. Two things that have their own local coordinate systems could be unified, and that unification of two separate standalone coordinate systems might reveal that one of those systems is spinning relative to the other. These are thought experiments, not easy things to imagine, because teachers have a difficult time connecting to students on a one-to-one enough basis to ensure that these critical insights are had. It's up to us. It gets back to free will. You need enough self-discipline. In other words, the ability to override your innate animal behavior based on abstract notions that reveal some reward is in the future by being able to get down some rule that will be able to, that allows you to make more accurate predictions about reality, what's going on. Bammo, whammo, higher order, abstract level thinking, greater generalities on impossibly complex systems that are actually going on that would drive you insane if your senses could see every little detail of why the green leaves of trees turn orange and red in the autumn. If you could see that down to the chlorophyll molecule level with your eyes, watch things going into hibernation around you and the energies and forces in play in all things, the clouds in the sky, the curvature of space-time around you. If you had the God's eye view of the universe, you would probably not be able to hold your mind together as a unique, distinct individual. The God perspective probably blows the mind of a single node, neuron, a unit, a self-conscious speck of dust within some greater system that can support an infinite quantity and variety, a seemingly or effectively infinite, right? Because within the state of life, within a unit of life of any single speck of consciousness or being within that system, it could never in its entire life measure every other speck of dust, measure the distances that it could travel. So it's the same way that we talk about the observable universe, that if the universe keeps expanding, why the heat death of the universe is such an abysmal picture, because what chunks will ever be left together? Will not Hawking radiation and things like it determine that everything radiates heat until there is nothing left to radiate heat? And it will be an even dispersion of maybe not even hydrogen, because hydrogen is at least chemically reactive, and any little perturbance could set a cascading motion into effect, which would be perhaps another big bomb, right? Big bang, big bang, big bomb, big bang. So the Big Bang might have just been the heat death of the prior universe having achieved such even distribution that its static state becomes fragile. And there is nothingness because something always perturbs. And the perturbance now is a question of scale, because the smallest things we know is alternatively a quark, but we destroy quarks in collisions, so perhaps it goes down to a particle of something that is just one Planck unit in size, a theoretical smallest unit, 10 to the negative, I don't know, is it 30 or 100? I think it's down at some order of magnitude that makes it the smallest size a black hole could ever collapse to. The smallest theoretical size of a black hole. Take a black hole and bleed off all its energy through Hawking radiations till it has nothing left to give, and it shrank in size and contents to the point where it is just 1 unit large. That size is one Planck unit in size and duration, perhaps, because there's a Planck length of time as well. Now, perhaps they persist, and perhaps they don't exist for only 1 Planck unit of time. But what is time at that scale, too? Because time is a function of space and all that. Wow. So, the heat death of the universe is one bleak place indeed, but it sets the stage for what we perceive today as the rapid expansion. What do they call that? The expansion, the bifurcation, rapid growth at the very beginning of the universe. And then a slowing down as things take their final form. Or there is no final form. Take the form that we know it as by now, whose distribution in space, as I've recently learned, follows the pattern of mold. Slime mold. Patterns of living organism growth modeled on slime mold is the closest predictive tool to the network of voids and threads, almost like a honeycomb-like distribution of bright matter, of things that we can see, of things like galaxies like our own that cluster up into galactic clusters, which are distributed in such a way as it looks like slime mold throughout the observable universe until it doesn't anymore, because no light from that distance can reach us. So slime mold spread out inside a sphere with us in the middle. That's the universe, the observable universe. Any point within that universe may be as important as any other point in that universe, because it all may actually be connected because non-locality. Your thoughts might be God's thoughts. God, such as it were, might be projecting its consciousness down into you because non-locality. The inconsequentiality of scale, because once you take away the importance of distance between things, if distance has no import, neither does scale. So it's not that things are connected just anywhere in the universe, but things could potentially be connected up and down through the nested hierarchy of universes, so that if we're all just a simulation, a consciousness within the sim could be as tied to God as consciousnesses nested up and down, up through the nested sims with which we might be in, and down within the nested sims we might all create, accidentally by creating super halls in the LHC, or intentionally by growing them in, Campbell-like Game of Life simulations in our Apple Watches of the future. Who knows? Wouldn't that be interesting, that your watch could be infinite nested universes, which you, as a being of an outer one, could potentially somehow interact with through non-locality rules. Time is a problem because we experience things with time as part of the experience. So if you were to communicate up to something whose time scale is stretched out, long, to whom our entire lives and evolution of species and galactic expanding and collapsing of super civilizations is not even, registering on the time scale. It's not even within the heartbeat of the beings upward through the nesting. How can you communicate with them? How can they communicate with us? Their time scale is so different. perhaps it can be answered. Differences in time scale. If time scale is a derivative thing, just as location is a derivative thing, such that we can say distances don't matter because entanglement, could you say scales don't matter because entanglement too? And if the answer to that is yes, then all consciousness is godlike consciousness, potentially. And it's all in one big conversation, as one way as it may be. We may be just communicating our narratives upwards. Are we doing that? Communicating a narrative upwards? Boy, these cars. Now, they're not Lamborghinis, but they are these Hondas and things like it, with a giant spoiler put on the back, all the brand labels removed. So if it is a Honda, the Honda logo is removed. Black tinted windows and some weird muffler. And then a bright yellow convertible is definitely zigzagging to follow it. WTF, people. Entangled particles we are. Human free will we have. Projecting stories outwards, laterally, along people and things like us, we do. In creations within our own dimension, frame of reference, stage upon which we're acting, while we're wrapped up in these material, mortal coils and vessels and automatons and meat puppets. We make our meat puppets go like this. Driving cars. Drink it in, last generation of people who are going to drive their own cars. It will, within my lifetime, be considered unsafe for someone to actually be driving a car. All the accidents that actually still happen will be as a result of human error, humans flicking off auto nav and doing it themselves, because it's one of the few remaining thrills in life one can have. And so I drive a Jeep Wrangler. The last year before they became too computerized on the dashboard, I have an old school analog, speed gauge and fuel gauge. Speaking of fuel gauges, I will have to hit the gas station in not too long. I also want to pick up some food. There's a wacky Jeep with a trailer behind me. It looks like a Jeep trailer on a Jeep. You might catch a picture of it through the rearview mirror. I'm not sure. Stop is coming up at exit 37 with Dunkin's and gas. And so exit 37 it is for me. I like this exit. We use the power of our Jeep to make sure we can merge in a place that's safe and doesn't piss anyone off. The kind of exit is not feeling like the kind of rest stop that it was billed as. I hate that about these exits on I-80 and 280 in Jersey. Diner to the left, Dunkin' to the left. Okay, I follow Dunkin' to the left. Exxon to the left, Shell to the right, and BP to the right. Well, what do I care? It's Dunkin's to the left that I really care about. Whew. So, let's internalize our tools, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make the utilization of tools like the next generation's language not be AIs that we become children to, but become Python, which allow us more precise expression of automation algorithms than we have today. let's state it more simply. We're trying to become perhaps computer literate in the Donald Knuth sense. Let's all become computer literate. Let's all just become literate in the Don Knuth sense, so that we can have working algorithms embedded into the same place where we document those working algorithms. Because sometimes, as self-evident as Python code is, it is not self-evident enough that it couldn't benefit by a little bit of Markdown or any other language you want to use to create pictures. You can use SVG if you can write in it, I believe. And you can certainly use HTML. Packages that output GIFs you can use. So APIs, there's going to be APIs in the picture for sure. It's Python plus certain APIs that start to become eternal. It's going to be written into our DNA one day, ladies and gentlemen. The code of Linux and Python and generic, probably x86 or ARM processors. Git will be in there. And some of the more popular Python libraries, I'm pretty sure, will be in there. I'll get my coffee first and get my gas on the way out so I can extend this talk just a wee bit. Oh, it drives through. How perfect. I'll keep this going through my Dunkin' Donuts stop. How about that? You get to hear my interaction with human beings. Almost. At least through Windows. Yeah, hi there. I will have the grilled cheese on sourdough sandwich, please.
Grilled cheese, okay.
And I'll have, can I have that with ham?
Ham is no more, discontinued.
Oh, no more ham, okay. That's good to hear, actually. Do you have bacon?
Yeah, bacon.
I'll have it with bacon, please.
Bacon?
Yeah. I'll also have a large hot coffee with 4 sugars and almond milk, please.
Yep, anything else?
Oh, I'll take one of those specialty donuts, please.
Sure, you go.
The cookie cheer.
Yep.
And that's all.
Next window, 1196.
Thank you. 47 minutes into the video. So interesting. Maybe I'll even keep this running through getting gas, right? No reason not. That's everything? No? Okay. I'll eat that after my sandwich. It's so nice to be in a day where you can like talk like this and people just assume you're talking to someone on video instead of just shooting a YouTube video. So let me think. What are the next topics I want to get in here? Yeah, we're learning tools. We're committing those tools to automatic memory, so we use them as naturally as we use extensions of our body. We're turning Linux, Python, Vim, and Git into an appendage, into appendages of our body. We learn to use them expertly within our lives. We document how we use these things. We use them to create systems. We breathe life into these little Frankenstein monsters. Now, hardware is a tricky game because hardware and platforms always keep changing, but hardware and platforms will also be virtualized so that you can instantiate them in the cloud or your own personal hardware of some other form in the future. So it's worth, thank you. It is worth targeting abstract platforms that will always be able to be virtualized, containerized, or whatnot, So you want to get yourself thinking in containerized format or in a containerized way as early as possible to uncouple you from the hardware. Uncouple yourself. Make it not important what body your soul was instantiated in, right? First order of practice is to do that with running instances of Linux. Running instances of Linux is where we virtualize or containerize, because that is the generic unit of computing that we can wrap our minds around and achieve certain automations around. Even if it's not as powerful as, say, a human being can think and do things, it is still awfully powerful. Alright, this will do. So hang with me. I wish there was a pause button like the Android video app, but there's not. So I'll be with you in a moment. All right, my car is filling up, and while that's going on, I'll continue to talk. Platform gate 9 3/4. Platform, yeah. Boop, 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 boop. It's okay to get expert at tools that you can assure will be around forever. That means free and open source. That means not making your long-term transgenerational automation systems based on Mac or anything Apple, or you'll be in violation of Apple's terms of services. The same can be said for Windows, but the situation's even worse. No, the situation's not worse on Windows. The licensing issues are just as bad either way, Apple or Microsoft. If you're not allowed to use the code, you're not allowed to use the code. That's a problem. So instead, we base it on the most free and open source parts of Linux, Python, Vim, and Git we can, and then we acknowledge the fact what I'm proposing is a very steep learning curve. One does not just jump onto Linux, Python, Vim, and Git. One does that in incremental steps. And those steps are the Windows subsystem for Linux under Windows, because chances are you're on Windows, because Mac is still only usually 10 or 12% of the market. It happens to be the programmers and coders. They're already programmers and coders, and they've taken the elite approach. They're on Macs. If you're angling to go generic anyway, why start out on a Mac? Well, the answer to that might be it's Unix already, and at least you're on Unix. That is no longer the correct thinking, because it's better to be on Ubuntu Linux than it is to be on Mac Unix, because Mac Unix lacks a formal Apple-supported free and open source software repository. So although you're on the Nix world, you're not so much on the free and open source Nix world. Technically you are, because they contributed it back. Darwin, the Unix that Macs are based on, are truly free and open source, but the repo is a special thing. It's how you install software without a Microsoft store or an Apple store. It's migrating gradually towards something called Snap under the guidance of Ubuntu, but it's not really fully there yet. and you're reliant on the repos of particular Linux distros. Reliant on the repos of distros. I gotta make sure I go out the same way I came in. It was in the direction of the 2 gas stations. I saw these, yep, I go to the right, I get back on I-80 or 280 west, because east is towards the city, and the Poconos that I'm going towards is west, away from the city. So we proceed with caution. I don't think that's it. That's the on-ramp to something. Oh, I see I-80 east up ahead. I hope this isn't the I-80 west entrance. If it is, I just blew past it. So if I don't see I-80 west up there, I'm gonna have to come around. Oh, this has got to be it. I missed it. I screwed that up. I'm gonna have to U-turn around there. It's not the worst thing in the world. So it actually is important points for the video. There are times in the past when I have, in fact, taken the wrong turn in my videos, at which time I feel highly compelled to just flip the camera off, because I don't necessarily want to expose or be distracted. Expose mistakes or be distracted. But honestly, what am I hiding? And if multitasking types of tasks that you can do simultaneous is true, I should be able to correct myself rather easily in this gas station. It might be that you can't turn around in the parking lot of companies like this, you know, private businesses, but BP spilled all that oil into, I think it was Alaska, so F them. Turn around in their parking lot. Yeah, and I see the signs for I-80 West in the other direction, so just being human, right? At an hour in, Mike got lost in this video. Not lost, I just missed a way to get back onto the highway most efficiently after doing a stop for gas. And here, we wait as long as it takes till it is absolutely safe. No cars in any direction. Then we pull out. Now, of course, there are cars, but they see me making my move, so I have asserted myself. I-80 West to the left. Yay! Nicely done. Free will exists. Whether the universe is replayable into its exact current state or not is perhaps the actual question, right? Does human free will exist if the universe replayed with the exact... Yes, you can't know initial conditions. You can never enter it into the computer. We are accepting that fact. This is not a practical experiment. But if it were possible from an outside the system, from a God perspective, to roll back the needle to a certain point in time and say, keep playing again from here, would it play back in the exact same way? Do things like complexity and chaos simply make things unpredictable? Incalculably complex within any computing systems within the system, but deterministic, super deterministic nonetheless in nature, such that you do not even need non-locality to explain quantum entanglement. Those particles are not really connected. Whatever appears like dependency on checking the state and spooky action at a distance, whatever appears like dependency on non-locality is not, because the outcome was predestined at the moment of creation, much less the moment on in the Bell inequality theorem experiment. The experiment that would prove Bell's inequality has as one of its components, the same way there's an alpha particle generator, things that are radioactive, like radium, are giving off, I believe it's neutrons, gradually changing the element from one to another in the periodic table until all those neutrons are given off and the thing is no longer radioactive. And it takes such a long period of time, and there's still such a blurred line to the final, radiation neutron particle being emitted as an alpha particle, radiation particle, that it's incalculatable. So we deal with statistics and we talk in terms of half-lives. And through these, mathematical tricks, we can say that true random is a part of a process, that something is not able to be calculated, that things exist in two or more states at the same time, that they have a upspin and a downspin, such as it were, even though spins and rotations is apparently not the right way to conceptualize angular momentum in a particle. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Spin appears to be the exact right thing to talk about and visualize it as. I guess they say it's not because things can have spins in two directions at the same time. Well, if it's not a real particle and it's some sort of wave or vibration, of course it can. An out-of-phase vibration with itself. That's two spin directions at the same time. How hard is it to visualize something whose thread-like constituents, the strings of superstring theory and such, but its loop, the loop of the loop quantum gravity theory, is vibrating in some crazy figure-8 vibration such that it neither gets tangled with itself nor can be pinned down as to one side of the figure-8 being dominant over the other side of the figure-8 being dominant, such that it has spin in both directions at once. Until, of course, you reach down and you pinch it, and that interferes with the vibration pattern, so it chooses one or the other. But until that moment, it could be equally both. And something that came into contact with that in the past has a similar vibration pattern, but is in a different place in space. So it's easy to imagine two things that have a crazy figure-8 vibration pattern getting into sync with each other through contact, some mechanism of syncing up vibration-wise, but then pinching one stops the other in the opposite location. They're somehow, it's more than being synchronized, it's being still connected. If it was really just a hologram and it existed on 2D space, that gets rid of one of your problems of non-locality, because you've collapsed actual 3D space into 2 dimensions. Now, how do you get rid of that, last thing? Well, those things are really still in touch with each other, still touching each other in a 2-dimensional hologram wrapped on the surface of a black hole sense. They're either occupying the same space or are exactly next to each other, space-time node-wise. They came into contact with each other and never left contact with each other, although the projection of their image in 3D space with the hologram makes them look very far apart indeed, only along the dimension of space that is the illusion. Beautiful theories. I am not a math person. How could I ever even express that? Maybe through Python. It occurred to me that I understood things like scalar vectors and tensors. Tensors are just two matrices of tuples. I know tuple matrices. Numbers are just vector quantities. Forget real numbers. Oh, so you could put fractions inside those tuples. You can store true ratios, true symbols for things. You could store the symbol for pi rather than the 3.14 number itself. Yes! The decimal system of floating point math in real numbers is an illusion. 1 over 3 being, 3 1/3 repeating, or 3.3 or 33 point, the percentage of 1/3 is 33.3 with a line over it because you can't write repeating 3's forever. WTF! That's a strong indication of real numbers not being real. Just draw one short line, draw a slash, and draw 3 short lines on the other side of that slash. 1 over 3, as expressed pictorially. That is a much stronger symbol for 1/3 than 1 over 3, the loopy 3. What would an alien make over 1 over the numeral 3 versus 1 over, say, the Roman numeral 3? They'd be able to make a lot more sense of the ratio you're trying to express in the later case, of course. Boy, I want my grilled cheese sandwich. I'll wrap it up there. We're internalizing tools, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be able to express a TensorFlow tuple containing pi as pure ratios in Python without the aid of artificial intelligence. And that should just be part of your, natural born right as a sentient being. Let's internalize some Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, ladies and gentlemen. It's got the permissive enough license to do so. There's no reason not to. Let's wrap up some instances of could always be running code in the form of Linux containers using LXD. It's the right licensing all the way down. Maybe we'll employ Snap in our server build scripts. Oh, there are server build scripts. It's not the actual particular instance of the Linux container that's important, but it's the much condensed magic spell of how to cast one, how to create one, and perchance copy some initial state data into location from a Git repo on perhaps your own instance of a GitLab repository that's not even part of the internet in some future lineage domain. Ancestral code. Sort of our DNA, sort of not our DNA. Who says it needs to be in our DNA? Michael Levin, my microbiology hero, talks about how epigenealogically it does not even need to be encoded into your DNA. It can just be passed down behavioral gene expression. Let's grow 2 heads, the 2 heads of Mike Levin. The one talking about how it happens genetically and how we can use it to create biorobots. You should really check out this scary Michael Levin. And how we can use it to create daemons of the more reasonable modern homunculus sense, where our homunculus is as intangible as an instance of a running Linux container in a cloud can be. It's never really substanceless. It needs to be stored somewhere. There's the memory and hard drive component of it, solid state or not, encoded or not, archived or not, public or not, whatever. And the data that goes with it, which is perhaps the same but perhaps different. No one's to say that the code that you instantiate as the running instance of the program has to be the same code, has to be the same as the data you load onto it to assume some uniqueness as an instance. which is separate still from the much shorter script that you use to build a working instance of such a server. Because to say that exact instance of a Linux image is required is to say there's something magical about that instance of the Linux image, which is not, should not be the case in the age and world of generic computing instances. Certain things should be able to be taken for granted, like, I don't know, Linux kernel versions historically, state of repos, the ability to pin versions. So repos that continue to exist, instantiatable instances of images that continue to exist of the kernel, if not the running instance, the runnable instance. That's a pretty modest vision of the future. At an hour and 11 minutes in, I've expressed the goal of being a transgenerationalist in terms of code and knowledge, and perhaps know-how, training things that can train things. I can't even, won't go there. Keep the video usable. I have a lot to offer, and it's tough to get it. Don't expect everyone to be able to get it. But all I can say is that right now what I want to get is into my grilled cheese sandwich. So I'll wrap up there. I think I've said enough. In my next video, I'll carry on the talking head videos that I had just recently produced, which is giving my LXD container instances the ability to do a post-GitHub cloning install. I have 2 phases of installs going on already. That from a requirements.txt by pip, so there's a pip unfreezing phase. There's a phase that comes after it, which handles the apt installs, which one could argue would go before the pip stuff to get like a XML parser there that the Python stuff might need as a requirement. But I haven't experienced that yet, and I have experienced the need to run post-pip install scripts. Both Puppeteer and Microsoft Playwright have install Playwright, install Puppeteer as post-pip install phases. So I run my apt install phase after the pip installs. So the pip unfreeze, the app installs, and then a phase after that is surely coming. Or before that, I'll put it somewhere in there that makes the most sense, which is a series of git clonings. Git clone is an alternative to pip install in particular, so you can have the whole repository sitting in the repos directory at the time the server build is done, and you have a full working Linux system with full persistence and none of the Docker compositing tricks that are required to get this working under the Docker vision. This is LXD, my friends. This is the not microkernel approach, not microservices approach. This is the monolithic, tightly coupled approach. LXD reflects the monolithic, tightly coupled, sometimes higher performance, always easier to get working, more practical approach. Docker represents perhaps a safer, cleaner, more scalable in the cloud, conservative of your resources approach. Each have their role, but mine is certainly not the later, which came earlier. Docker came first. Well, no, chroot came first, so hardcore containerization for sysadmins who really knew what they were doing before DevOps was even a term. They were chrooting. I did it once or twice ages ago in the age of like Mandrake Linux, just to make sure I could. And I never really did much with it. Imagine if I were a hardcore comp sci person, if I did these things back in like 91 and 92 when they were first coming into our homes through vectors. I mean, really it became more like 96, 97, because first Linus had to create it, then it needed acceptance, then it needed to trickle out enough to reach people like me which would be through the CD-ROMatizing of Mandrake Linux. Because I was still on dial-up in those days. So to really get it and to be able to install it on some local x86 hardware, it was Mandrake Linux on a 386, maybe with, MMX, multimedia enhanced Intel chips. And the beginning of the fancier and fancier chips until they reverted to using Celerons, because Pentium Celerons happened to be some magic perfect level of complexity they hit. And so when they went with multi-core, it wasn't the big server Xenon chips or the over-complex, billions of transistors per chip type chips. It was only the, I think, millions of transistors per chip type chip in the simplified Celeron, sort of their version of Cortex. I guess what would be called, the x86 version of the Cortex multi-core world. ARM Cortex. Yeah, I'm using the right terminology. x86 had their own sort of thing like that, and that was the Celeron class Pentium. Might have been Pentium 3. I think it was Fab 8, the Israeli branch of Intel that said, hey, just use this. Just push a bunch of these in there and everything becomes easier, faster, higher, more performance, more clusterable, more friendly towards neural networks and machine learning and AI and all that. So, and, ATI, Radeon, all those, AMD, I guess one of those, I forget which. One set of GPIs became part of the, I think, Intel consortium, and another GPU became part of the AMD consortium. I forget exactly how it all breaks down. There's a strong preference today towards NVIDIA because of CUDA machine learning libraries that we put out. And that's a dependency we're trying to break. We don't want to jump onto something that says it has to be NVIDIA. It should also just as well be Intel GPUs, highly integrated into the CPU, into the motherboard and stuff. In fact, in case, game caliber NVIDIA didn't make it, so that we can use normal powered laptops to do some machine learning. Well, anyway, I'm jumping all over the place. Let's think generic, and let's think generic with just the right APIs so that it cuts across time, certainly human time scales. 20 years in the future, a lot of the things you're talking about will make perfect sense to them. So a lot of, philosophy of Unix stuff, piping, command line stuff, SSH, command line terminal, that kind of thing, Python code, not Node.js code and not JavaScript code, at least not too much, unless you really want to snapshot and pin your versions, but a lot of Python code and server scripts that rebuild things up from scratch with the occasional pinned version. Noah's Ark of Tech, you blend in some data pulled from different sources, you get it running on almost anything that can run generic hardware today, tomorrow, and you will it to people, including instructions on how to instantiate it and where working instances might be and how to get into communication with them and how to make new instances of your own as technology allows it, and to scale in different ways, and to look for different benefits you can achieve to make it more of a growing system, but to also have original versions instantiatable so that you can catch creeping complexity and always be able to do it old school if you want to. So there you have it. That's LXD Win. LXD to win? LXD Win. Well, anyway, it's a repo I'm working on, and it's awesome. If you want to kick the tires, it's MIKLEVIN, MIKLEV.in/UX, MIKLEV.in/UX. Kick the tires on your own Linux. On Windows, get to Jupyter Notebook through a browser and start thinking about leaving legacy in a much truer sense than legacy